Imagine being a man so broken that you no longer care whether you live or die. That's exactly how we're introduced to John Creasy in Man on Fire, a former CIA operative and assassin who spent most of his life surrounded by violence, death, and guilt. By the start of the movie, Creasy is emotionally destroyed. He drinks constantly, barely speaks to anybody, and honestly looks like somebody who's already given up on life. Mexico City at this time is overwhelmed with kidnappings, especially targeting rich families and their children. So Creasy's old friend Rayburn gets him a job protecting a little girl named Pita Ramos. At first, Creasy doesn't even want the job. He hates emotional attachment and wants to stay disconnected from the world around him. But everything changes after he meets Pita. Unlike everybody else, Pita doesn't judge him. She talks to him constantly, asks him questions, jokes around with him, and slowly breaks through the emotional walls he built around himself. And honestly, this relationship is what makes the movie so powerful. Because for the first time in years, Creasy starts feeling human again. He teaches Pita how to swim, supports her during competitions, and gradually becomes more like a father figure than just a bodyguard. There's even a scene where Pita asks Creasy what his old job was, and he simply replies, "My job was death." That single line perfectly explains who Creasy is, a man haunted by everything he's done in his past. But Pita gives him something he thought he lost forever: purpose. And that's exactly why what happens next completely destroys him. One day, while driving Pita home from piano lessons, armed kidnappers ambush the car. Creasy immediately fights back even after being shot multiple times. And honestly, this scene shows just how dangerous he really is, because even while bleeding out, he still manages to kill several attackers. But despite everything he does, the kidnappers still take Pita away. After surviving his injuries, Creasy learns that Pita was supposedly killed during the kidnapping situation. And the moment he hears that news, something inside him completely snaps. This is where the movie changes from an emotional drama into a brutal revenge thriller. Because Creasy no longer cares about surviving anymore. Now he only cares about revenge. After recovering, Creasy begins hunting down every single person connected to the kidnapping. And honestly, from this point onward, the movie becomes terrifying because Creasy feels less like a normal man and more like a force of destruction. Using his CIA training, he kidnaps corrupt cops, interrogates gang members, and slowly works his way through the entire criminal organization. One of the reasons these scenes work so well is because Creasy doesn't enjoy violence. Every act feels personal. He's not doing this because he loves revenge. He's doing it because guilt and grief are consuming him. There's a famous moment where Creasy tells a corrupt officer, "Forgiveness is between them and God. It's my job to arrange the meeting." Honestly, that line perfectly captures who Creasy becomes during this part of the movie. A man who believes he has nothing left except punishment and death. As his investigation continues, Creasy discovers that the kidnapping operation is much bigger than expected. It involves corrupt police officers, criminals, and powerful people connected to an organization known as The Voice. But then the movie reveals its biggest twist. Pita is actually still alive, and that changes everything. The shocking betrayal. As Creasy digs deeper, he learns something even more disturbing. Pita's kidnapping wasn't entirely random. Her own father was secretly involved in setting it up because he was drowning in debt and desperate for money. The plan was supposed to be an insurance scam involving ransom payments. But things spiraled out of control and became far more dangerous than expected. Honestly, this twist makes the movie even darker because it shows how greed and desperation destroyed innocent lives. Once Creasy realizes Pita survived, revenge is no longer his only goal. Now he wants to save her. And for the first time since the kidnapping, Creasy actually has hope again. The ending. Explained. Eventually, the kidnappers contact Creasy with an offer. They'll release Pita, but only if Creasy gives himself up in exchange. And without hesitation, he agrees. Honestly, this is what completes Creasy's character arc. At the start of the movie, he was a man who hated himself and believed his life had no meaning. But through Pita, he rediscovered humanity. So now, sacrificing himself for her feels like the one truly meaningful thing he can still do. In the emotional final exchange, Pita runs toward Creasy crying and hugs him tightly before being reunited with her mother. But Creasy already knows he's dying. His gunshot wounds throughout the movie have become too severe, and physically, he's falling apart. After Pita is safely released, Creasy leaves with the kidnappers. And during the drive away, he finally dies. Honestly, the reason this ending hits so hard is because Creasy doesn't die as the same man we met at the beginning. At first, he was emotionally empty and consumed by guilt. But by the end, he dies knowing he finally did something good. He found redemption. And in many ways, Pita saved him just as much as he saved her. What makes Man on Fire so memorable is that underneath all the action and revenge, it's really a deeply emotional story about redemption. John Creasy spent years believing he was beyond saving because of the violence in his past. But through his relationship with Peeta, he slowly rediscovered compassion, purpose, and humanity. The revenge scenes are brutal and intense, but they only work emotionally because the audience genuinely cares about Creasy and Peeta's relationship. And honestly, that final sacrifice is what turned John Creasy into one of the most unforgettable action characters ever put on screen. Because in the end, he wasn't fighting for revenge anymore. He was fighting for the one person who reminded him that he still had a soul.